Just a couple of minutes, let it breathe, make sure everything is nice and stable across the YouTube platform. Welcome in, Broncos country. Unfortunately, the Denver Broncos season does not end on a high note as they lose to the Las Vegas Raiders 27-14 on the road. They now officially finish with another losing record, their 8th losing record in a row, which is absolutely unfortunate. However, the silver lining here is that the Denver Broncos did officially beat out the Las Vegas Raiders in draft positioning as they officially picked 12th overall in the 2024 NFL Draft. They are in position to trade up and get their future franchise quarterback. That's something we will talk about over the course of this entire stream. I know that's going to be the number one topic of conversation. At the end of the day, the Denver Broncos season was one that was full of absolute ups and downs, peaks and valleys. All started off with that really, really tough beginning, 1-5 start, losing to the Raiders and Commanders back to back, then following it up with a 70-20 loss to the Miami Dolphins, getting our first win of the year against the Chicago Bears before coming back home and losing once again to the New York Jets, a Thursday night loss to the Kansas City Chiefs. And then after that, Broncos country, we roll off a 5-game winning streak against Green Bay, Kansas City, Minnesota, Cleveland, and again, man, it was just a really, really awesome season overall, even though it didn't really end the way we wanted it to. There were so many positive memories that I'll take away from this year. I mean, being able to witness the Broncos beat the Kansas City Chiefs for the first time in the Patrick Mahomes era at home, that's a game that is a very special memory for me that I will take away from a long time. And I just feel like overall, man, although this season didn't end the way we wanted it to, it was a good beginning to the Sean Payton era and a sense of direction that this team finally has. It's heading in a positive direction for the first time in a long time, man. And it really, 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 really is nice that this Broncos team actually is going somewhere as opposed to just toiling around in purgatory. This Broncos season, again, didn't end the way we wanted it to, but we now are in prime position to trade up and get our future franchise quarterback. We've got SC in the house saying, let's draft JJ McCarthy. We got Joaquin in the house saying, Denver Broncos for life. We've got Broncos fan saying, stop spamming. We got Cruz through in the space saying, perfect ending. We got SC saying, terrible ending. I know that there's quite a bit of divisiveness in Broncos country right now about how this season ended and about the direction that this team is going under Sean Payton. A lot of people disagree with how the Broncos approached moving on from Russell Wilson. But at the end of the day, man, Broncos country, I know, is going to always have that sort of division. It's the nature of every single fan base. The way I see it, though, the Denver Broncos ended their really just didn't end their season on a high note, but they had a really, really strong season overall, man. That's something I will take away. I'm always a glass half full. And in a sense, they did end their season on a high note because they jumped the Raiders on draft position. And they now have a chance, again, to be in a position to get their guy. Is it J.J. McCarthy? Is it Bo Nix? Is it Michael Penix? Or is it somebody like Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, who Sean Payton has been on the record saying is a generational talent, Drake May? All those quarterbacks I will evaluate in due time. I've evaluated Jaden Daniels in full. I'm absolutely smitten over him. I've seen one game of Michael Penix. Wasn't the best game, but that Texas game apparently was a complete revelation from him. So I'm really, really excited to see that game and see if Michael Penix Jr. can rise up my draft board after, again, kind of a disappointing first game that I evaluated him against Oregon. That's going to be a really, really fun evaluation, I feel like. Jaden Daniels, I've already talked about how smitten I am over him. Caleb Williams, I don't know if the Broncos are going to be in position to draft him or Drake May because the top two picks of the draft with the Chicago Bears and the Washington Commanders, I strongly feel like those are two teams that are going to get both of those guys off the board. And if Chicago does elect to stay with Justin Fields, somebody else will trade into that number one overall spot. It could be the Denver Broncos to get Caleb Williams, but that's something that is going to be discussed a whole lot as we officially now enter draft season here in Broncos country and on the channel. We got Broncos fans saying we prevent the Raiders from getting in our way. Absolutely. That's a big positive that we can take away from today for sure. We need a quarterback that can run the ball. Well, that certainly is Jaden Daniels. He's got Lamar Jackson, Justin Fields level explosiveness and athleticism. I really feel like he could be that guy who could be the next franchise quarterback that takes over the NFL depending on where he goes. If he gets in the hands of Sean Payton, I feel like Sean could do really good things with him, allow him to improve and develop his quick game, his overall processing at the line of scrimmage, which has gotten better over the course of his college career. I followed him quite a bit ever since he was at Arizona State, and now obviously he transferred to LSU. I followed Jaden Daniels' progression in college quite a bit. I don't do that very often with college quarterbacks, and I've impressed with the growth that we've seen from Jaden Daniels. So he's the guy that I am the most smitten over. I know Michael Penix Jr. has gained a lot of traction just because of his play style. He's somebody who can thrive in that Sean Payton offense really, really well. Thank you, Nana. Shout out to you for the Mountain Dew. He's somebody who could thrive in that Sean Payton offense with his ability to anticipate throws, throw the quick game, throw and operate out of the pocket. I feel like Michael Penix Jr. is somebody who really fits that Sean Payton mold. However, the question becomes the injuries and the health concerns. He's busted up both of his knees with ACL tears, and he's busted up both of his shoulders, which for me is more of a concern than the knees. Thank you so much, Jess. Really appreciate you. Happy New Year. Hope you are doing well, and good luck with all your exams and everything that has been going on with you recently. Hopefully everything is going well for you, Jess. I see the game from J.J. McCarthy. Number one, he can run the ball. Number two, he can run out of the pocket, and he can throw. So, yeah, J.J. McCarthy is another one that I'm really, really excited to properly go in and eval. I know the Raiders are very smitten on him, and the Broncos might be in a position to get their guy ahead of J.J. McCarthy, but if J.J.'s their guy, man, absolutely. What the Raiders' plan is they do want to get Jim Harbaugh. That's something that Mark Davis has been pretty adamant about, according to people who are familiar with what's going on in the Raiders organization. So, again, man, I'm very curious to see if the Raiders' decision to go out there and win this game is going to bite them in the ass and prevent them from getting their guy. Will J.J. McCarthy be there? Because that is the guy for the Raiders. It wasn't looking good for us from the Broncos. Not one time did it look good for us in this game. Yeah, this game was definitely one of those ones where the Broncos just came out flat. Let's go ahead and evaluate the game itself. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time on this. The Denver Broncos didn't play their best football on the day. Offensively, we were dominated in the trenches. Max Crosby took Cam Fleming to school. Jarrett Stidham was inaccurate. He didn't play his best game. 20 for 34, 272 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. Our run game was completely lackluster. 20 total carries for the team, 48 yards, 2.4 yards per carry, and a touchdown. Javonte Williams, our leading rusher, 9 carries for 32 yards. Run game was sorely disappointing. Brandon Johnson, actually our leading receiver on the day, 4 receptions, 88 yards. Jerry Jeudy, 3 catches, 79 yards, and a touchdown. Javonte Williams, 7 catches for 43 yards. Samaje Perine, 3 catches, 23 yards. Adam Troutman, 1 catch, 21 yards. And Marvin Mims, 1 catch for 16 yards. Defensively, looks like we got a sack from Josie Jewell, sack from Baron Browning, and a sack from Nick Benito on the day. No, let's see here. Yeah, no interceptions on the day. Just overall, the game itself, there's not really a whole lot noteworthy that we can get out of the game itself. It's all about how the Denver Broncos are moving forward, moving into next season. Are they going to roll with Jarrett Stidham as their spot starter week 1 while their rookie quarterback develops? I personally don't think that's the case after Jarrett Stidham put out a very lackluster performance on the day. The Broncos have to have an upgrade at veteran quarterback, be it if he's going to be the bridge quarterback for our rookie or the backup behind our rookie that serves as a mentor. I think that the top candidates for that job right now are Jameis Winston, Andy Dalton, who's thrived in this offensive scheme before, and also Gardner Minshew. Those are the three top names that I would keep an eye on as a veteran quarterback addition that the Denver Broncos could potentially make. In terms of the draft, again, it's all going to be about what quarterback the Denver Broncos covet. I covet Jaden Daniels. I could see Michael Penix being the Denver Broncos guy if the medicals check out. It's all going to come down to what the doctors say in Indianapolis at the combine for Michael Penix Jr. J.J. McCarthy, I know other teams are a little bit more smitten on him. And then unless the Denver Broncos want to make a drastic move and trade Pat Surtain in order to acquire really high-end draft picks, then I don't foresee the Denver Broncos being in a position to draft Caleb Williams or Drake May, who are most likely going to go number 1 and number 2 overall. The teams that are currently ahead of the Denver Broncos right now in terms of draft seeding that really need a quarterback are whoever's going to pick number 1 overall, be it the Chicago Bears if they roll with Caleb or somebody else. Washington needs a quarterback. Patriots need a quarterback. Tennessee is going to roll with Will Levis most likely. Atlanta needs a quarterback. And outside of that, it's Denver. So the top threats for a quarterback right now for the Denver Broncos are the Washington Commanders, the New England Patriots, the Atlanta Falcons, and that's really about it. So if you were to jump those teams right there, the Broncos could be in a position to get almost whatever quarterback they would like. There we go. Didn't they just give Ben some money to come back? Ben DiNucci, they will give him some money to come back on Monday. He'll be signed to a futures deal, so that will go into effect when the offseason programs officially start. So yeah, Ben DiNucci will be back. There we go. Jarrett Stidham played so poorly, I'm rethinking whether Russ should stay. Those are two very separate conversations. Russell Wilson will not be here next year. The finances are not in the Broncos' favor. Russell and the Broncos have already split up. Russell had left that opportunity open in his press conference a couple of weeks ago, but no, Broncos country. Russell Wilson will be moving on. The Broncos will be releasing him in March. They'll designate him as a post-June 1st release in order to spread the cap around, but Russell Wilson will not be on the roster by the time his bonus kicks in on the 4th day of the league year. So yeah, man, that's two separate equations. Whether Jarrett Stidham or Russell Wilson will be here, the answer is most likely neither one of them will be here next year. Jarrett Stidham's under a 2-year contract, so I think that he'll probably be here for at least the offseason, like training camp and stuff, but I wouldn't be surprised if he enters the season as like the 3rd-string quarterback. The Broncos just go ahead and cut him, or they keep him on the roster as the emergency 3rd-string quarterback, which you can do. So I don't know, man. Jarrett Stidham, I don't foresee him being here in Denver as the starter or the number 2. The best case scenario for him is probably the number 3. He doesn't have the arm talent necessary to be able to operate at a high level in the NFL. He operated well pre-snap at the line of scrimmage, I thought, but the arm talent just sells him way too short. Jarrett Stidham didn't perform well today. He had a better game against the Chargers, but the Raiders kind of exposed him a little bit. He did not perform at the level the Broncos need from him in order to be an effective backup quarterback even. So, yeah, that completely settles this conversation about Jarrett Stidham. The Broncos will not be moving forward with him. He will not be a starter for the Denver Broncos moving forward. So we can put any talk of Jarrett Stidham as the Broncos Week 1 starter to bed. We've already talked about the Broncos potentially bringing in someone like Jameis Winston, Andy Dalton, Gardner Minshew in order to serve as that veteran bridge quarterback or veteran backup mentor if the rookie does end up starting right away. The Broncos are going to trade up, Broncos country. They are going to be in a position to get their franchise quarterback. Is it Jaden Daniels? Is it Caleb Williams? Is it Drake May? Is it Michael Penix? Is it J.J. McCarthy? Is it Bo Nix? I don't know. That all remains to be seen, but the Broncos are going to get their guy. They can no longer afford to dilly-dally around with these Band-Aid veteran quarterbacks like the Case Keenums and the Joe Flaccos of the world. They can't afford to dilly-dally with a second-round pick at quarterback like Drew Lock. They can't afford to dilly-dally with a first-round quarterback bust like Paxton Lynch, who was drafted late in the first round. They've got to draft somebody early in the first round that they've pinpointed and identified as a guy who has franchise quarterback potential. And right now, based off the quarterbacks that I've properly evaluated, the guy that I'm smitten over because of his athleticism is Jaden Daniels. He's got really high-level processing at the line of scrimmage, and as he continues to grow and develop in that side of his game, he'll be able to thrive outside of structure with his athleticism, and I feel like he'll put the ball in harm's way a lot less than Russell Wilson did when he operates out of structure, and that'll make Sean Payton a little bit more patient with that style of play. So that's the direction that the Denver Broncos, in my opinion, if I were GM, should move into. We do indeed have the 12th pick, David, so the Broncos have a chance to really be able to trade into the top 5 if they want to. They've got some good ammo. In order to get a second-round pick, the Broncos may have to make some tough moves. I feel like Jerry Jeudy is a guy that just has proven he doesn't really mesh in this offensive scheme. He did have a nice game today, I thought, but on the whole, it feels like Jeudy is ready for a change of scenery. The Broncos are likely going to move on from him. Justin Simmons is a guy that the Denver Broncos might have to move on from in order to get the draft capital necessary to move up. He's really the only player that I feel like could net a second-round pick for this team. I wouldn't make that move. I would not make that move, full disclaimer, because of how big of a leader Justin Simmons is in the locker room and in the Denver community. I would not make that move. I am not endorsing it, but it could be a move the Denver Broncos could make. I'm just kind of warning Broncos country that that's something that could happen. The Broncos could be in line to make some potentially painful cuts this offseason. Another one is Tim Patrick. The Broncos might approach Tim Patrick and ask him if he wants to redo his deal and take a pretty significant pay cut in order to stay home. If he doesn't want to do that, then Tim Patrick could be another cap casualty. The Broncos, in order to make this whole move work by moving on from Russell Wilson, they're going to have to make some moves that are a little bit painful. Do I prefer Bo Nix or Michael Penix? I haven't properly evaluated Bo Nix yet, so I can't fairly answer that question. And I haven't really properly evaluated Penix either because I haven't seen his most recent game. Fight for Freedom says, it was a pleasure watching you this year. I can't wait to watch you again next season. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate you. And just because the season's over, we are not going anywhere, Broncos country. We've still got draft content, free agency content, got a lot of videos coming up over the next couple of months, Broncos country. So again, just because the season's over, that doesn't mean the content is slowing down whatsoever over here, both on this channel as well as my other channel, Sparkin Sports Football. In fact, as we head into the playoffs, I'm really going to start wrapping up the content on the other channel. We've done that over the last couple of weeks. So yeah, man, just because the Broncos season is over doesn't mean we are going anywhere. There's still plenty to talk about. The NFL and Broncos never sleep. Neither Elway or Manning were drafted by the Broncos. Hopefully we can draft our next Super Bowl winning quarterback. So here's the logic here. Yeah, the Broncos have never drafted a quarterback that they were able to develop into a franchise quarterback, but they have a decent enough track record of being able to develop quarterbacks. You look at John Elway, although they didn't draft him, they got him as a rookie in a draft day trade. That's as good as drafting a quarterback for me. I mean, they identified their guy, they went out and got him. That's as good as making the draft pick without making the draft pick for me. And they were able to develop John Elway. Then you look at Jay Cutler. Obviously, Josh McDaniels did him a disservice there by the way that they finished things off, but Jay was developing nicely in those first couple of years under Mike Shanahan. Then you look at Sean Payton's track record when it comes to developing young quarterbacks. He was literally able to take a guy who's a tight end formerly in Taysom Hill right now, and he was able to win games with him at quarterback and develop him into a decent level player. Sean Payton also played a critical role in the early development of Tony Romo, who sure wasn't drafted. He was a UDFA, but he still arose into one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL in his era, and Sean Payton played a key part in developing him. And then when you look at Drew Brees, he helped take Brees to the next level in his game. Although Brees did have a couple of really good final years in San Diego, I feel like Sean Payton helped take Breeze to that next level. So sure, the Broncos and Sean Payton don't have a record of being able to draft and develop a quarterback, but they do have a track record of developing quarterbacks. So that is good news. If we get a quarterback, I think we should get Drake May. I don't think the Broncos are going to be in position to draft Drake May. They'd have to trade up to the number 2 overall pick to get Drake, and if that were to happen, the only scenario where that would happen is if they traded away Pat Surtain. I don't think that would be a sound move organizationally for the Denver Broncos. I'm not making that move. So, yeah, that's the only way that I personally could see the Denver Broncos getting somebody like Drake May. For me, it's going to be trading into like the top 4. Your best bet is going to be Jaden Daniels, who right now is my QB1. I've talked about that ad nauseum. I just really, really love the potential that Jaden Daniels has to be a future franchise quarterback and next big thing in the NFL. Just make sure I'm going to get the Dolphins-Bills game on here. That's a game that's got heavy playoff implications for the AFC East title. There we go. Coldwater says Jarrett Stidham is QB1. Man, did you see him play today, though? I don't think Jarrett Stidham is going to be the Denver Broncos bridge quarterback. He did not play well enough to showcase that in these last 2 games, especially against the Raiders. I don't think Jarrett Stidham will be that guy. Can we please get a beast at defensive tackle? I strongly feel like the Broncos are going to rebuild their defensive line this offseason. That's something that I think they're going to try to do in free agency, get a couple of interior defenders in, get another edge player in here, and they're also going to have to make some moves at off-ball linebacker because Josie Jewell is an impending free agent. Then, when you move into the secondary, there are some other moves that the Broncos are going to have to make as well. P.J. Locke is an impending free agent, and yes, the Broncos are going to make a strong push to keep him in the building. They also may be outbid for his services by another team. If that's the case, the Broncos are going to have to look at another safety alongside Justin Simmons, and in the even more unlikely scenario that the Denver Broncos trade Justin Simmons in order to get a higher draft pick, like a second round pick to use as ammo to move up for a quarterback, then you're going to have to address potentially 2 safety spots there, which is a little bit easier to address, but replacing one of the best safeties in the NFL in Justin Simmons is a scenario that I personally don't want to entertain, but it isn't out of the realm of possibilities for the Denver Broncos. And then this past game against the Raiders only proved that the Denver Broncos have to address the number 2 boundary corner spot. They cannot roll with Fabian Moreau at that spot next year. He's also an impending free agent. He likely will not be back next year. Between Damari Mathis and Fabian Moreau, the Broncos do not have an answer at number 2 boundary corner alongside Pat Surtain. They've got a strong nickel guy in Jaquan McMillan, who's a budding superstar, but in terms of having somebody on the outside, they don't have that right now. That's a top position of need on defense. So the Broncos may be in line for sort of a mini rebuild on defense between the moves that they have to make both on their front 7 as well as in the secondary. So that's something that I can look at for sure and say that the Broncos are going to end up having to do this offseason. Then when you look at the offensive side of the ball, outside of quarterback, I am in the strong consensus that the Broncos are going to move on from Jerry Jeudy this offseason. It's time to cut your losses with him, get him into a better schematic fit. The grass seems to be greener on the other side in Judy's case, so might as well cut your losses there, recoup whatever draft picks you can, and allow Jerry Jeudy to go to a situation where hopefully he can take his skill set and it be used more to his advantage. Also, I feel like the Broncos are going to need to make a move at tight end. Greg Dulcich is simply not a guy that the team can depend on moving forward as a tight end 1. He's somebody that has just been injury plagued throughout his entire career, and even heading into this offseason, people forget that Greg Dulcich was listed as the tight end 2 in training camp behind Adam Troutman because Dulcich was basically being utilized as a big slot receiver who offered virtually no value as a blocker. The Broncos need a tight end who can offer value both as a blocker as well as a receiver. So that's going to be a big position of need for the Broncos. Running back as well on the offensive side of the ball. I think Javonte Williams, I'm hoping he'll bounce back next year on his second year back from his ACL tear, but what if he doesn't? The Broncos have to have a better contingency plan behind him at running back than just Samaje Perine and Jaleel McLaughlin. They have to have somebody who can truly spell Javonte Williams as a starting running back, and Samaje Perine, he's a good role player, a good niche player. Same for Jaleel McLaughlin, but neither one of those guys can be effective bell cow running backs, and that's what the Broncos need behind Javonte Williams. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if they used like a third, fourth round pick on a running back. Could we get that tight end from Texas? I haven't evaluated the tight ends yet, so I'm not sure which one you're referring to there. I'm just now starting to get into my draft evaluation process. But if the Broncos can get a true dynamic threat at tight end, especially in the draft, that would be very good news for them. What would you grade Marvin Mims this season? Personally, an A-. I have to give Marvin Mims two different grades. Offensively, I would give him a C. I feel like he's got a lot of development he has to do in terms of his route running, in terms of his hands, in terms of his anticipation when catching the ball. But as a return man, A+. I mean, he's been the best return man in the NFL this year. That alone earned him a Pro Bowl nod. So that's something that is very promising for Marvin Mims. But on the offensive side of the ball, he still has some growing and developing he has to do with his route running and stuff like that in order to be a better receiver. But as a return specialist, chef's kiss. Couldn't be more impressed with Marvin Mims. Has Sean Payton hinted toward which quarterback he might be looking at, or is it way too early for Payton to be dropping names? I don't think Payton's going to ever drop names. He doesn't want to give anybody else a competitive advantage. That would be bad football and bad business by Sean Payton. He has been on the record prior to being hired as Broncos head coach. He was on the record saying that Caleb Williams was a generational talent and that any team that's in a position to should move mountains to get him. So maybe Sean still holds that same philosophy. That was prior to Caleb's slightly disappointing senior season. So do with that information what you will. I think that right now Michael Penix Jr. is a top candidate for the Broncos because of how well he could fit into Sean Payton's scheme, but it's all going to come down to medicals with him. If he gets evaluated at the combine and his knees and his shoulder don't shake out well, then Michael Penix is probably going to be a guy that NFL teams will stay away from. You think to somebody like Carson Strong, who had potential first-round acumen coming out of Nevada, but his injuries were so bad that he ended up going undrafted and is now out of the NFL altogether. That could be a scenario with Michael Penix. I don't think he's going to go undrafted, but he could fall out of the first round because of the medicals. The talent's there with Michael Penix. He's got the it factor to his game. It's just all going to come down to medicals with Penix. Again, I just don't see the Broncos being in a position to draft Caleb Williams or Drake May. I anticipate Jaden Daniels being the third quarterback off the board. And then when it comes to like Bo Nix and J.J. McCarthy, I have not properly evaluated those guys yet, so I can't really speak to where I'm grading them. But right now, if it's up to me, I'm moving mountains to get Jaden Daniels. Sean is very secretive, just like DJ says. So Sean's not going to tip his hand. He's not going to let out any indication as to what the Broncos are thinking. Sean Payton's going to be very mum, very quiet about this because he doesn't want to give any team ahead of him a competitive advantage. That's, again, just very bad business that Sean Payton is not about. So, yeah, man, I don't anticipate the Broncos saying a whole lot. There was a lot of media leaks that got out during the 2019 draft cycle that John Elway was smitten over Drew Lock. It was probably the worst kept secret that the Broncos wanted to get Drew Lock that year. And they were very fortunate that he fell to them in the second round. At least at the time they were fortunate. But yeah, the Broncos aren't going to be like that this year. I wouldn't be surprised if there aren't very many media reports out there that leak out what Sean Payton is indicating because he just doesn't want a competitive disadvantage. And I wouldn't blame him on that too. So yeah, man, for me, we can all sit here and speculate what quarterbacks we want the Denver Broncos to take, but For all we know, Sean Payton could have a completely different plan that he's going to go towards that throws a complete curveball in everybody's direction. Maybe he does trade up to the number 1 overall pick and gets Caleb Williams. I don't think that the Broncos are going to be in position to do that, but wouldn't surprise me either. It's the NFL. Nothing really surprises me anymore. Bo Nix fits Sean Payton's system really well. He's tall and an excellent passer over the middle of the field, has a beautiful deep ball, and improvises super well. Right now, just again, not off evaluation, but my one concern with Bo Nix is his age right now, and that's another one that I have slightly with Michael Penix Jr. With Jaden Daniels, let me see, how old is Jaden Daniels? Because he was a true freshman in 2019 when I started watching him. He's 23. He's 23, so he's basically a year younger than I am. Yeah, man, for me, Jaden Daniels, he'd be the guy that I'd be looking towards as sort of a younger guy that could fit the mold well as to what this Broncos team is looking for in a potential franchise quarterback, and even more, because what Jaden Daniels brings as an athlete, literally, you watch him run the ball and you think he's Lamar Jackson. I'm not even kidding. That alone makes him worth the investment and makes him worth trading up whatever mountains you need to move in order to get him. Bo Nix could be a nice guy that the Broncos could look into if the Broncos don't want to make that move and trade up, but I know that ownership doesn't want to sit around and toil with this. They are willing to move the mountains that they need to move to get a franchise quarterback. They thought that that's what they were getting with Sean Payton. That was the whole logic when George Payton made the trade. And ownership, obviously they weren't here when that move was made, but they were highly endorsive of the move when they first got here because they thought that they were getting a franchise quarterback in Russell Wilson. Now it's starting to become clear and obvious that that's not the case. And on the subject of George Payton, reports have come out indicating that it's going to be Sean Payton's decision if George Payton gets to stay or not. I know that that's rubbed some members of Broncos country the wrong way. Me personally, the guy who was always contracted to be here long term was Sean Payton. He's only worked in New Orleans with one GM, and that was Mickey Loomis. He and Mickey Loomis were almost tied at the hips. If Sean Payton is going to get his guy to have tied at his hip, basically, I want it to be his guy. For all we know, George Payton is that guy, but based on the reports that have been leaked to the media recently, I wouldn't be surprised at all if the Broncos do indeed move on from George Payton. Benjamin Albright has come out multiple times and said that GMs don't get fired until after the draft, and if the Broncos were to make a move, it wouldn't be until then at GM. I don't understand that logic. I really don't, because why would you want your GM to draft for you heading into next season and then him not be there? I don't understand that logic whatsoever. If you're going to move on from your GM, you move on from him either mid-season or at the end of the year. I don't see any logic behind keeping George Payton here through the draft and then him not being here after that point. However, the Broncos did do that before in 2012. Brian Zanders ran the 2012 draft, and it was after that point when John Elway full-blown assumed every duty as the GM, and Brian Zanders ended up departing the Denver Broncos. So it does happen in the NFL. That is kind of how things go down, but logically to me, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. That's just me. Well, Russ is 33 and we paid him all that money. The age thing isn't a problem to me. Also, I feel like Sean would want a more experienced guy. That is a fair argument that I know is a philosophy that was held of Bill Parcells, who was Sean Payton's mentor. He always wanted a rookie quarterback who was a little bit older, who had a lot of playing experience in college, and that is something that is to the benefit of Bo Nix, certainly, who's been in college for a long time, man. He's been in the NCAA, I want to say, since 2019. So, yeah, man, that could be something that is in favor of someone like Bo Nix. How old's J.J. McCarthy? I know he's a little bit younger. See, and then that could be a detriment to somebody like J.J. McCarthy, who's only 20 years old. He'll be 21 on the 20th of January. That could be something to the detriment of somebody like that. 78 says Albright tells some tales. He does tell some tales, but he also has some truth nuggets dropped in between those tales. He does have some good sources in that Broncos building. I don't know who talks to him, but somebody close to the Broncos front office talks to him. Reports coming out now say that Peyton will be here next season. Let's see. Let's see if I can find some of those reports here. Again, tomorrow is Black Monday. We will see a lot of coaching moves happening over the next couple of days. Yeah, let's see if I can find some recent reports on George Payton here. Because we had a recent report, I believe it was from Ian Rappaport, that said that it would be Sean Payton's decision. Oh, here we go. Yep. So, Mile High Report, who's the initial source on it? Oh, so I guess Rap Sheet and Tom Pelissero reported this morning that the Broncos are expected to bring back George Payton. So there you go, man. That's big news for me, and that's actually something... You know what, Broncos country, we're going into video making mode right now because that's actually huge enough that that's going to warrant its own video. So pardon me if for the next few minutes I'm not paying complete attention to the chat. I'm going to go into video making mode. I want to chop this up and release this segment as its own video, basically. So yeah, guys, we're going to go into video making mode here in just a second. Get a little more Mountain Dew here, wet my whistle. All right, guys, we are going to go to video making mode in 3, 2, 1, go. So, after the Denver Broncos lost today to the Las Vegas Raiders, we just got an interesting report that came out, apparently before the game. According to Ian Rappaport and Tom Pelissero, indirectly reported from Mile High Report here, the Broncos are expected to retain George Payton for his 4th year as Denver Broncos GM. Despite all of his shortcomings and mishaps during his tenure as Broncos GM, from some bad draft picks to signing injury-prone free agents to making the move to trade for Russell Wilson and extend his contract, the Broncos are going to move forward with George Payton as their GM in 2024. The Broncos head into the offseason with plenty of questions and a variety of pertinent conversations to be had, but sources tell Ian Rappaport and Tom Pelissero there shouldn't be a question about the status of GM George Payton. Payton is viewed as safe inside the organization. Based on his overall evaluation of talents and a strong working relationship with Sean Payton, that's a big one here, a strong working relationship with Sean Payton, all indications are that George will stay. All right, I think that line alone is very telling here. George Payton was always going to be at the mercy of Sean Payton, essentially. That was the case whenever the Broncos went out and hired Sean Payton and signed him to a multi-year contract. The Broncos' vision is for Sean Payton to be here for at least 4 years. And when Sean Payton was in New Orleans, he only worked with one general manager, and that was Mickey Loomis, who has been there since 2002 as their GM. So if Sean Payton is going to be here long term, he's going to want his GM that he's going to be tied at the hip with long term. And it seems like since Sean Payton and George Payton have a strong working relationship, George is going to be the guy that Sean Payton ties his hip to during his tenure as Denver Broncos head coach. It seems like the Broncos are going to be ride or die with George Payton as GM. Not going to lie, I'm a little bit surprised by that just because of some of the bad moves that George Payton has made in terms of the draft picks. There have been some questionable draft moves. The one that is super egregious to me that I can think about just right off the top of my head is drafting Delarian Turner-Yell 1 pick ahead of Tariq Woolen. I literally went and compiled a list not too long ago of all of the questionable moves that George Payton made as GM and all of the counter moves that he could have made that would have better benefited the Broncos organization. Then you look at some of his free agency signings from guys like Randy Gregory and Ronald Darby, who had completely blown their expectations in Denver and ended up dealing with injuries. Randy Gregory was shipped out of town for peanuts. Ronald Darby tore his ACL, and then he was cut last offseason. The Broncos really just have made several questionable moves under George Paton. I have some questions as to why they are keeping him in the building, but hey man, that's just me. Clearly Sean Payton feels like he's going to move forward comfortably with George Paton as his GM. All right, Broncos country, I am curious about your thoughts on the Broncos' decision to retain George Paton as GM heading into 2024. Drop those comments down below, guys. I would love to hear your thoughts as always. Be sure to leave a like on this video as well as subscribe and ring the bell so these videos appear in your notification feed. And until next time, guys, I'm your host, Gage Madrid, saying peace out. Not on the stream, guys. We're not piecing out on the stream, just on the video. Video is done. Thank you guys for bearing with me on that. I really appreciate it. So yeah, man, that's a really, really interesting development right there, that the Broncos are going to move forward with George Paton as their GM. And since this report here is indicating that George and Sean have a strong working relationship, then all right, I guess then that's the move that the Broncos are going to make. I'm surprised. I definitely am surprised, but I also can totally understand it. Let's see if Sean Payton has spoken to the media. We'll go ahead and bring in Sean Payton's final press conference. Let me go ahead and get my headphones for that real quick. It's about an 8-minute presser. All right, guys, let's go ahead and bring Sean in here. Yes, they did. Yep. What do you think about Jarrett Stidham was the question. Kept shooting themselves in the foot. Oh, bad, bad. Max Crosby completely destroyed Cam Fleming.
Kind of one or two looks, and
there we go. Sorry, guys. Jesus.
You know, we had a good plan
Sorry
going in,
about
but
that.
I expected us to run the ball better today. I thought he hung in there. Had some tough snaps. Got
Here,
hit.
let's
quite
go
a
ahead
bit.
and start that over. I'm so sorry,
I
guys.
felt
Jesus
like
Christ.
obviously they ran it better than us. They protected better than us. Our quarterback was under a lot more duress than theirs. You can point to a number of things. I mean, we had some opportunities. The 99-yard drive at the end of the half was disappointing, and then not being able to get off the field when we cut it to 10.
Yeah.
So I think the mood would be disappointing, not discouraged, but nonetheless, you'd certainly like to finish on a brighter note than that.
Yeah, he's definitely
I
not
reminded
pleased.
them, just remember how this feels, because it's something that you spend so much time in working towards a common goal, and then when you fall short of that, it just doesn't sit right. It can't with anyone. So, any questions? We're good. Listen, I thought he hung in there.
He asked,
Some
what
tough
can we take
snaps.
away from Jarrett's
Got hit quite. I think he had
mics today.
5 sacks, nine pressures. But overall, listen, he battled. I'll watch the film, and we'll have a chance to see more of it. I'm not quite sure what our third down numbers are. I do know. Shoot, at one point we were third and 11 plus like 4 times. I think we averaged 3rd and 8.
Well, mission accomplished there, man.
I thought we got beat up front.
And again, that's why I'm not upset about this loss.
I'll be honest with you, and I expected us to be able to run the ball better, and certainly, we did a lot to nudge and bump and help ourselves in protection, and yet obviously not enough.
You touched upon the running game. After the Cleveland game, it seems like you never got it going, and what happened?
Yeah, it's a good question. Well, I don't think. No, I think I don't think so. I don't think so. We'll have to look at that closely. And
I really feel like he's covering
Cleveland,
for
we were
Javonte
getting
there.
kind of
I
one
think
or two
that was
looks
a lot of it.
And we had a good plan
Welcome
going
in,
in,
Ghost
but
Dancer
I
Radio.
expected us to
That's
run
a
the ball
name I
better
haven't
today.
seen before. Welcome in. Good to see you.
Late in the half, is the idea there when you took it after the first down to make them, you're hoping to make them fun?
Yeah. Listen, when you get the ball on the 1 yard line, I mean, and it's a fair question, but I think the same thing happened in New England. I mean, holy cow, when you have what appears to be, I just think of that offensively, and I know someone would say, well, your offense isn't, but from a field position standpoint, we're looking at, we want the half to extend, we want it to be longer. And listen, there's an expectation level of how we should be defensively, defending 99 yards.
Vince Joseph will still be here. Yes, Ronnie.
Yeah. Well, look, that's where we're moving. That's where we, it just doesn't. There's a lot that goes into that, and I would say I'm a little. It's our offense, and it evolves wherever you're. It's not. This is it. And I've told you guys we've had different quarterbacks play. We've had different running backs over the years, and part of our job is to build the offense around the ingredients that are in the building, and we'll continue to do that.
Yes.
Those are some good plays. Obviously, the third or the second down, I think it was second and real long. That was a real big play for us. We needed a spark, and then the explosive later in the game. Those are big plays.
You had talked, Coach, about 9 wins and the importance of it. Now that the season's over at 8, does it take away from anything, or do you feel like you're still moving in the right direction overall?
Yeah, look.
I think the
you are what your
foundation's
record
already
is.
been laid.
In our league, it's just the truth. And so, like I said, you're disappointed, not discouraged, but disappointed, because you do have an expectation, and then we go from there. We begin this off season, which is going to involve a lot of work.
You say disappointed, not discouraged. Why not discouraged?
Because this isn't the industry to get discouraged. This is. It would have been real easy to get discouraged with the start of the season. This
Yep.
is. No one said this was going to be easy.
Anything surprising the result, just about the season or about the two?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think this is the pressure for that. I think I speak to you guys again, but I thought you meant tonight. So relative to the season, I thought we'd play better tonight relative to this team we were playing. I thought we'd rush the ball better, and I thought we would certainly defend better than we did.
David, please no politics in here. I really
that's the
appreciate
thing
it.
that
This
was
is a sports
disappointing.
syndicate, not a political syndicate.
Say it again. Yeah, I mean, you evaluate everything, you're right, and so practice snaps, training camp, preseason, regular season, for all of these guys. But this wasn't about just trying to get a look at Jared. This was about trying to win.
Sort of foresee playing better, excelling better in the different areas you talked about. From a coach's standpoint, you always hear we could have prepared for better. Do you see that the coaching staff could have?
Yeah, listen, no, I absolutely. That's the thing that's most disappointing. You come away as a teacher and you're like, man, we collectively, and I said that in there, we didn't do a good enough job. There's things that happened in that game that get me upset because I know better. So it starts with us. Those guys did a good job today. I'm talking about Vegas, and that's that's the thing that keeps you up. Oh, there was a couple unimportant. Anything else? All right.
He wasn't willing to talk about the bonuses.
Yeah. Well, we knew, and I think to Antonio's credit, when he took over, you kind of saw that and felt that with this team. So that wasn't a surprise. Yeah, I mean, there are attempts, but part of it is defending it. In other words, I've said this to you guys, if your third down numbers aren't good, it's hard to have good rushing days. So just show me a good rushing day, and you're probably going to see third down time of possession. You stay on the field, and we've experienced both sides of it. So they had a number of third down. I don't know what the third down numbers were for them. But when you possess the ball, obviously then you have more snaps but I expected us, honestly, to be more successful running the ball as well. Yeah, we have a holding penalty, then we have an offensive pass interference penalty.
Can't
right
have those
away,
self-inflicted
you
wounds,
make
man.
it difficult for yourself. Yeah. All right, thank you.
All right. So that is Sean Payton in his final post-game press conference of the 2023 season. Jumping back into the chat here, I saw a comment from DS that says, I feel like no one is talking about how healthy we've been this year. Yes, we've had injuries before and some during the season, but finally injuries weren't a liability and no one talks about it. I totally agree, man. That's a testament to the new strength and conditioning staff and Dan Dalrymple and company. Those guys have done a great job. It's also a testament just to a good stroke of
is
luck
a quiet
that the
determination.
Denver Broncos have been able to get this year. Oh, sorry guys, hold on one second. I don't know what that audio was. There we go. But yeah, I definitely feel like that was one encouraging sign from this season, is that the Broncos weren't littered with injuries like they were in 2022. And that's an encouraging sign for sure about this strength and conditioning staff, that they're doing things right and that they're not putting players in a position to get injured all the time. So that's one good thing for sure. DS also says, I'll be upset about this loss until after the draft. Then I'll see if I'm happy about the loss or not. 100%, man. This is one of those losses that, yeah, it hurts in the short term, but long term, it does help the Denver Broncos draft positioning. It gives them a chance to go up and trade up and get their future franchise quarterback. And they jump the Raiders in the draft position. So, in a sense, they did beat the Raiders today, if you think about it. Ghost Answer says, I'm actually a Broncos fan. Don't judge a book by its cover. This is the most I've looked forward to a draft. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. I'd say it's a good thing. Great job this season, Cage. My highlight of this year was going to the Broncos game versus the Vikings and winning on the last second touchdown. It was also my first Broncos game ever. Definitely a season to remember. 100%. A lot of happy memories from this year. Bronco fan says, Sean looks mad, and he should be. Sean Payton is the one that needs to go. He's sabotaged this team and is putting us in negative cap space. At the end of the day, Sean Payton's not the one who made the decision to give Russell Wilson that exuberant amount of money. It was the ownership group. They're the one who put us in this negative position cap space wise. Also, they also have the best tool to counter that cap space, and that's liquid cash that you can give to players in forms of bonuses and whatnot to sort of circumvent the salary cap. That is one benefit of having a cash-rich owner. What you really should look into is not how much salary cap a team has, it's how much cash they spend over the cap each given year. And the Broncos are perfectly willing to spend that cash. So that's something that's not on Sean Payton at the end of the day. Denver's defense is number 2 in the regular season. Well, they're not the number 2 ranked defense. They can't be because their defensive numbers were completely skewed because of the Miami game. But if you take away that Miami game and really the first 3 games of the year, Denver's defense performed at a top 10 level. So at the end of the day, man, this defense is on the right track. Unfortunately, today and the last 2 weeks, they've gone back to their soft zone defense crap, which is not something that I'm very endorsive of. But there will be no major coaching change this year, Broncos country. There will be no coordinator firings. Vance Joseph will be our defensive coordinator next year. Joe Lombardi will be the offensive coordinator in name next year, although, of course, Sean Payton will be the offensive play caller. I don't see any big positional groups being shifted. Maybe Christian Parker might get some interviews to be a defensive coordinator. That's certainly a possibility. But on the whole, I don't foresee any changes being made. Drastic changes being made to this Denver Broncos coaching staff. All right, guys, we are getting ready to wrap up the post-game stream here, and we are officially about ready to turn the page forward here in Broncos country as we move into free agency, we move into draft season. The Broncos are going to have several positions outside of quarterback that need to be addressed. Secondary, we're going to need to do some work at the second boundary corner spot, possibly safety in the event that they move on from PJ Locke, or in the event that somebody signs him to a much bigger deal than the Broncos can afford in free agency. That's the only way that we would lose PJ Locke. You got to get a number 2 boundary corner. You've got to do some rebuilding on the front 7, linebacking core. Got to get an alpha number 1 edge rusher. Got to get some more pieces on the interior defensive line. Got to get a true number 1 tight end. Got to get some more help at running back. Got to get some more help at receiver. This Broncos team is going to have a really, really interesting offseason cycle that we're entering. And I'm really looking forward to bringing you guys that coverage here on Broncos Syndicate, as well as my other channel, Sparkin Sports Football, where we're bringing coverage of all 31 other teams, as well as the Broncos. We'll probably be making some video tonight about this Dolphins-Bills game that's getting ready to start, so that's why we're getting ready to wrap up this game right here, or wrap up this stream right here. Thank you guys so much to everyone who has tuned in and showed your support throughout the course of this entire season. And again, just because the season's over, we are not going anywhere. All kinds of coverage coming up throughout the offseason. The NFL and the Denver Broncos never sleep. Thank you guys so much. Before we dip out of here, if you guys could just do me a big favor and leave a like on this stream, as well as subscribe and ring the notification bell so these videos and live streams appear in your notification feed, I would really appreciate it, guys. Those are 2 free and easy ways to share your support. Helps tell YouTube's algorithm to push us out and helps us get seen by more and more members of Broncos country just like you and me. And until 2024, Broncos country, I am your host, Gage Madrid.